England is associated with impeccable manners, tea exactly at 5 o'clock, and the aristocracy. But behind this strict facade hides a history of incredible state absurdity. This is a country where laws and habits often broke all the rules of logic. Forget about boring textbooks filled with knights and queens. Today we dissect the British past, where people rented fruits, put animals on trial, and paid a tax on sunlight. Welcome to the aesthetic of historical madness in foggy Albion. The window tax. In the late 17th century, the British Empire's treasury was heavily depleted. To replenish the budget, officials devised a brilliantly absurd plan, a window tax. The logic was simple. The richer a person, the larger their house and glass count. But instead of paying, the British responded with a massive architectural boycott. Homeowners began bricking up their windows, voluntarily plunging entire mansions into absolute darkness. Natural daylight became a luxury, available only to the elite. This led to catastrophic consequences for the nation's health, as people lived in damp, dark rooms for decades. The visual appearance of cities changed forever. Streets were filled with gloomy, blank facades that looked like closed fortresses. This law existed for over 150 years. Walking through modern London, you can still spot old buildings with blind brick niches instead of windows. It is a silent monument to how the state's sheer greed easily defeats common sense. The pineapple rental. In the 18th century, the symbol of absolute wealth in Europe wasn't diamonds or thoroughbred horses, but ordinary pineapples. Bringing this fruit intact from the colonies one day was harder than winning a war. Its cost equaled the price of an estate. Aristocrats did not buy pineapples to eat them. That was considered incredibly vulgar. The fruit was used, and as a central decor element at dinner parties. It was placed on a pedestal so that guests could fully appreciate the host's financial power. For those who wanted to show off but didn't have a fortune, special rental agencies existed. You could rent a pineapple for one evening, stroll with it under your arm at a social gathering, and return it right before it finally started to rot. It was a classic bubble of vanity. People hired security for fruits and built special climate-controlled greenhouses for them. Today, this exotic status symbol is sold in any supermarket, reminding us of the fleeting nature of any worldly luxury. The Great Stink. Victorian London was the capital of the world, but it smelled like an open sewer. The city grew too fast, and all the waste of the million-strong metropolis was dumped straight into the Thames. In the summer of 1858, reckoning came. An abnormal heat wave turned the country's main river into a thick, slowly boiling toxic mass. The stench was so unbearable that people were completely overwhelmed on the streets. The press dubbed this event the Great Stink, predicting the end of civilization. Ironically, the Parliament building was located right on the riverbank, so lords could pass laws without suffocating. The chamber's windows were draped with curtains heavily soaked in chloride of lime. But even this chemical defense didn't help at all. Only personal physical discomfort forced politicians to allocate colossal funds for the construction of a modern sewer system. This story proves that ecological reforms happen fastest when a disaster literally begins to knock on the doors of power. The Hartlepool monkey. During the Napoleonic Wars, Britain lived in constant fear of a French invasion. Paranoia reached such a level that common sense simply left the chat. A telling incident occurred in the small northern coastal port town of Hartlepool at that time. After a storm, the wreckage of a French ship washed ashore. The only survivor was a monkey, dressed in a miniature military uniform to entertain the crew. Local residents, who had never seen monkeys or Frenchmen in their lives, raised the alarm. They were absolutely certain that an enemy spy stood before them. The animal was arrested, brought to the town square, and put on an official trial. Since the accused could not answer questions in English, it was deemed clear proof of its dark guilt. The verdict was harsh, and the unusual visitor faced the strict consequences of wartime paranoia. today. This story sounds like an absurdist comedy, but it perfectly illustrates what mass hysteria and a total blinding fear of the unknown can lead to. The Poyai scheme. In the early 19th century, London investors were ready to put money into absolutely anything. Scottish adventurer Gregor MacGregor took advantage of this. He returned from South America and declared himself the prince of the wealthy nation of Poyais. He described cities with golden domes, fertile lands, and crystal-clear rivers. MacGregor opened an official embassy in London, printed his own money, and gave press interviews. Aristocrats lined up, eagerly buying the lands of this grand mirage. The problem was that the state of Poyai never existed on the map. It was just the impenetrable jungles of Honduras. When the first ships with settlers arrived in the Paradise Country, they discovered only swamps, mosquitoes, and absolute emptiness. This grandiose scam went down in history as one of the first examples of brilliant marketing out of nothing. MacGregor sold a dream, wrapped in pretty brochures. Surprisingly, even after the exposure, some victims continued to believe Poyai was real. The London beer flood. Industrial disasters are usually associated with fire or chemicals, but in 1814, London faced a calamity of a completely different nature. A huge, popular brewery right in the city center suddenly turned into the epicenter of a local tsunami. At the plant, the metal hoops on a gigantic fermentation tank suddenly snapped. About 1 million liters of dark porter broke free. A 4-meter wave of the intoxicating drink heavily damaged the factory's brick walls and crashed into the tight residential streets. It sounds like the setup for a comedy film, but for local residents, the consequences were extremely severe. The wave swept away buildings and flooded basements to the brim. Rescuers had to wade through thick foam, clearing the debris in total darkness. The court ruled this incident an act of God, completely freeing the owners from payouts. The beer flood forever changed safety standards in the industry, proving that even the most beloved beverage on an industrial scale is incredibly dangerous. The Ghost Army. During the Second World War, the art of camouflage reached incredible heights. The British command decided that the best way to deceive enemy intelligence was to create a massive illusion. Thus emerged the famous operation codenamed Fortitude. Engineers and artists built an entire ghost army. They placed hundreds of inflatable rubber tanks, plywood airplanes, and wooden cannons in the fields. From the air, it looked like an extremely powerful strike force ready for an immediate, massive offensive. But a picture alone was not enough. Special radio operators broadcasted fake orders and chatter of non-existent divisions around the clock. They created such dense informational noise that enemy analysts were absolutely certain the threat was real. This brilliant bluff forced the enemy to keep huge forces in the wrong place, awaiting a phantom strike. Inflatable tanks proved that in modern conflict, the winner is not the one with more steel, but the one who expertly manages the perception of reality. English history proves that the British always knew how to surprise. They can brick up windows for taxes, rent tropical fruits for parties, and win battles with inflatable tanks. This is a nation that has truly turned eccentricity into a fine art. If you want to learn more about how complete surrealism hides behind a facade of strict rules, subscribe to the channel and don't forget to hit the bell. In the next episode, we will dissect modern laws of this country that will absolutely break your brain.